My name is Ethel. I'm 58 years old, and I never imagined my own son would try to legally steal everything I'd worked for. I'm a widow, been one for 5 years now. I spent 32 years teaching elementary school, raising my son Brandon alone after my husband passed. I always thought Brandon understood the value of $1, understood the sacrifices I'd made. Until the day he asked me to fund a wedding that cost more than I'd earned in 3 years, and when I said no, everything changed. If you've ever had to choose between your principles and your child's love, you'll understand what happened next. Let me know where you're watching from, and please subscribe, because this story gets darker before it gets better. I live in a small house on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom with a front porch and a garden full of rose bushes I've tended for years. My mornings are simple: coffee on the porch, a good book. The kind of quiet life you earn after decades of work. My retirement income is modest. $3,200 a month from my pension. It's enough. I'm careful with money, always have been. But I also have savings. $180,000 to be exact. Most of it came from my husband's life insurance policy when he died. The rest I'd scraped together over the years, putting away what I could. That money was my safety net, my future, medical bills, emergencies, maybe a little something left for my granddaughter Sophie someday. Sophie, she's 4 years old, and she's the light of my life. Every Friday, Brandon would drop her off at my house. We'd bake chocolate chip cookies together, her little hands covered in flour. I'd read her stories before bed, tucked her in on those nights she stayed over. Those Fridays were everything to me. Watching her grow, hearing her laugh, seeing her eyes light up when she saw me waiting at the door. Brandon is my only child. He's 32 now, works in marketing, makes about $85,000 a year. Good money, not rich but comfortable. He was always a good son growing up. Helped me paint the house one summer, fixed my fence when it started falling apart. He knew what it meant to work hard because he watched me do it his whole life. Then 3 years ago, he met Madison. She's 28, works as a social media influencer. Her Instagram is full of designer handbags, expensive shoes, fancy restaurants. She's always posting about the lifestyle, as she calls it. Brandon changed after he met her. Slowly at first. He started talking about upgrading, about making connections, about living differently. He visited less, called less. But I told myself it was normal. He was building his own life. Sophie isn't Madison's daughter. She's from a relationship Brandon had before Madison, and I could see it. The way Madison looked at Sophie sometimes. Cold, distant, like the child was an inconvenience. It was a Tuesday evening in April when Brandon showed up at my door without calling first. He seemed excited, almost manic. He barely sat down before he started talking. The wedding. His dream wedding, he called it. A resort in Napa Valley. 250 guests. Flowers imported from Ecuador. A famous band. A photographer flying in from Los Angeles. A 7-course meal. Every detail planned to perfection. $220,000. That's what he said it would cost. I felt the room tilt. He kept talking, words tumbling out. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event, Mom. Madison's parents are contributing too. We want everything to be perfect. And then he said it. The ask. Mom, Madison and I were hoping you could help us with the wedding. We need about $180,000. I stared at him. I thought he was joking. I actually laughed, waiting for the punchline. But his face stayed serious. He meant it. He wanted my entire savings. Every penny I'd put away for my future. I tried to keep my voice steady. Brandon, that's my retirement savings. I can help with something reasonable, maybe 10 or 15,000, but I can't give you everything. His face changed. The excitement drained away, replaced by something I didn't recognize. Disappointment. Anger. I thought you'd want to support us, he said. This is important to us. I tried to explain. Medical expenses, living costs, the fact that I'm 58 and can't work anymore. He stood up, grabbed his jacket. Think about it, Mum. We'll talk soon. He left, and I sat there in my quiet house, feeling like I didn't know my own son anymore. 2 days later, I called him. I'd thought it through, rehearsed what I'd say. I needed to make him understand. I explained it all. The money wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. It was my future, my security. What if I got sick? What if I needed long-term care? I wanted to leave something for Sophie when I was gone. I offered again. $15,000. I'd help with the flowers, maybe the catering. But I couldn't empty my accounts for a party. His voice on the phone was ice. I see where your priorities are. I guess blood doesn't mean much when it comes to money. Brandon, that's not fair. I started to say more, but the line went dead. He'd hung up on me. 3 days of silence passed. Then my phone rang. Madison's number. She'd never called me before, not once in 3 years. I can't believe you'd sabotage your son's happiness like this. Her voice was sharp, accusing. Every other mother would be proud to help. My parents are contributing equally. Why can't you? I tried to stay calm. Madison, I explained to Brandon, I simply don't have that kind of money to give away. She cut me off. You have it. You're just selfish. You know what, fine. Don't expect to be part of our lives then. She hung up too. That Friday, Sophie didn't come. I waited by the door at the usual time. 5 o'clock came and went. 6 o'clock. Nothing. I called Brandon. No answer. I texted. Nothing. I sent an email. Silence. The next week I tried again. Every call went to voicemail. Every text ignored. I drove to their house on Wednesday evening. I could see lights on inside. I knocked. No one answered. I knocked again. I heard Sophie's voice inside asking who it was. Then quiet. They were home. They just wouldn't open the door. Brandon finally sent a text on the second Thursday. We need space. Please don't contact us. I stared at those words until they blurred. Space. From his own mother. Because I wouldn't bankrupt myself for a wedding. I couldn't sleep that night, or the next. I kept looking at pictures of Sophie on my refrigerator. Her finger painting from last month. The photo of us at the zoo, her sticky hands holding mine while we looked at the elephants. I called my best friend Dorothy. She's 62, retired from teaching like me. We'd been friends for 20 years. I told her everything through tears. She was furious on my behalf. Don't you dare give in, she said. What they're doing is manipulation. It's cruel. But every day without Sophie felt like dying a little. I'd walk through my house and see her toys still scattered in the spare bedroom, her favorite blanket folded on the chair. The book we'd been reading together, bookmarks still holding our place. I looked at the photo of my late husband on the wall, taken at our wedding 35 years ago. He'd worked so hard, 2 jobs at times. He'd want me to be smart with the money to be safe, but would he want me to lose our granddaughter? 3 weeks passed, 3 Fridays without Sophie. I saw Madison's Instagram through a mutual friend. Pictures from a bridal shower. Brandon and Sophie both in the photos. The caption read, "Celebrating with family who truly support us." The knife twisted deeper. It was a Thursday morning, 24 days after that last phone call. I was watering my roses when my phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. "Mom, I think we need to talk. Can we meet for dinner? I miss you. Sophie misses you too." My hands shook. I read it 3 times, then 4. Sophie missed me. Those 3 words broke something open in my chest. I called Dorothy immediately. She answered on the first ring. "He wants to meet," I told her. "For dinner. He says he misses me." "Be careful," she said. "But yes, give him a chance. Maybe he's come to his senses." I texted back. "Yes, I'd love that." That afternoon, Brandon called. His voice was different, polite, almost formal. He wanted to have a peace dinner, he said, to fix things. "I'm sorry for how we reacted, Mom. Madison and I talked, and we overreacted. Family is more important than money." Relief flooded through me. Where? When Saturday night, 7 o'clock, A restaurant downtown. Bella Notte, that Italian place you like. We want to apologize properly. Madison wants to apologize too. And Sophie? I asked, trying not to sound desperate. Can I see her? Of course, we'll bring her. I hung up and cried. Happy tears this time. He'd come around. We'd work this out. I bought Sophie a new doll that weekend, a book about butterflies she'd been wanting. I chose my clothes carefully. Navy blue dress, a cardigan. I wanted to look put together, like I hadn't been falling apart these past weeks. I practiced what I'd say. I love you both. I had to be responsible. Maybe I could contribute $20,000 if they scaled back the wedding. Compromise. That's what families do. Saturday evening, I drove downtown. The sky was grey, threatening rain. My heart pounded as I parked. This was it. We'd fix everything. I'd see Sophie again. I walked into Bella Notte. Warm lighting, quiet conversation. The host smiled and said, "They're waiting for you in the private room." Private room, that seemed nice, intimate. Better for a family conversation. He led me down a hallway to a door in the back. He opened it. Brandon and Madison sat at a table. No Sophie. Where's Sophie? I asked immediately. Brandon didn't quite meet my eyes. She's with Madison's parents. We thought it's better if adults talk first. A cold feeling settled in my stomach, but I forced a smile. Okay, we can talk. I sat down, setting the bag with Sophie's gifts on the chair beside me. The room felt too quiet. Madison wasn't smiling. Brandon looked tense. Should we order? I asked. Not yet, Brandon said. We need to discuss something first. The door opened behind me. 3 men in dark suits walked in. They carried leather briefcases. They looked like lawyers. My mouth went dry. Brandon, what is this? The oldest of the 3 men stepped forward. Grey hair, deep voice. Mrs. Morrison, my name is Mr. Patterson. These are my colleagues, Mr. Hughes and Ms. Caldwell. Please sit down. This is a legal matter. I stood instead. Legal matter. Brandon, what's going on? Brandon looked at the table. Madison checked her phone. Ms. Caldwell opened her briefcase. She was younger, sharp-looking. She pulled out a thick stack of papers and placed them on the table in front of me. These are documents regarding financial elder abuse and grandparents' rights, she said. Financial elder abuse. My voice came out strangled. I'm the victim of elder abuse. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Your son and his fiancée have consulted with us about their legal rights. They're concerned about your financial decision-making and emotional stability. These documents outline their concerns and propose solutions. I looked down at the papers. Words swam. Petition to restrict visitation. Demand for transfer of assets. Declaration of mental instability. This is insane, I whispered. Mr. Hughes spoke up. He was younger, his voice cold. You have 2 choices, Mrs. Morrison. You can sign these documents tonight, agreeing to place your savings into a trust fund managed by your son for your granddaughter's benefit. You'll also agree to supervised visitation only. Or we proceed with a court case. He continued ticking off points on his fingers. Court will be expensive. It will take months, maybe years. During that time you won't see Sophie at all. Your reputation in the community will be destroyed. Everyone will know you're under investigation for unstable behavior toward your family. My legs gave out. I sat hard in the chair. Madison finally looked up from her phone. We don't want it to get ugly, Ethel. Just sign. Then we can all move forward. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Brandon, is this what you want? Really? He met my eyes then. His were cold. Stranger's eyes. You made your choice when you refused to help us. Now you have to make another choice. Ms. Caldwell pushed the papers closer. We have witnesses prepared to testify about your erratic behavior. We have video footage of you acting inappropriately with Sophie. That's a lie. We have a child psychologist ready to evaluate the situation, Mr. Patterson interrupted. We have documentation of your refusal to support your family financially, evidence of hoarding behavior concerning isolation. Mr. Hughes leaned forward. Sign the papers tonight, and you can see Sophie again next week. Supervised, of course. Refuse, and we file a restraining order tomorrow morning. You'll never see that little girl again. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. They were going to take Sophie, take my money, take everything. Brandon's voice cut through. You have 5 minutes to decide, Mom. That's reasonable, isn't it? They all watched me, waiting, expecting me to break. I looked at the papers, at their faces, at my son, who'd become someone I didn't recognize, and then something shifted inside me. I reached slowly into my purse. They tensed, watching. Probably thought I was getting a pen, getting ready to sign away my life. I pulled out my phone. I pulled out a small recording device. I pulled out a manila folder. I set them all on the table. Now I said quietly, "Let me tell you what's actually going to happen tonight." I pressed play on the recording device. Madison's voice filled the room. I'd forgotten I had it, this old thing from when I used to record notes for lesson plans. But 3 weeks ago, Dorothy's nephew, who works in IT, had helped me recover something from my voicemail. A message Madison had left accidentally. A pocket dial, they call it. Madison's voice on the recording. The old lady has almost 200 grand. If we play this right, threaten her with Sophie, she'll break. Brandon's wrapped around my finger. This'll be easy money. Madison's face went white. I opened the manila folder. I'd spent $3,000 of my savings hiring a private investigator. Worth every penny. I spread out the papers. Printouts of emails between Madison and these so-called lawyers. Subject lines like quick cash grab strategy and scare tactic timeline. I looked at Mr. Patterson. You're a real lawyer. Barely. You're facing disbarment for malpractice next month. I called the Oregon State Bar. I looked at the other two. You're actors. I found your profiles on Craigslist. Here are the screenshots of Madison hiring you. $50 each for tonight's performance. Mr. Hughes, or whatever his real name was, stood up fast. His chair scraped back. This meeting is over. They grabbed their briefcases. Mr. Patterson's hands shook as he shoved papers inside. They practically ran for the door. Madison shrieked, "You had us investigated, you crazy old witch." I pulled out more papers. These were harder to get. Messages from the nanny who used to watch Sophie. Screenshots I'd paid her $200 for. Messages to her friends about how Madison treated Sophie. Left her alone for hours. Yelled at her for making noise. One video the nanny had taken on her phone insurance, she called it, of Madison, screaming in Sophie's face because the child spilled juice. "I've already spoken to Child Protective Services," I said. "I haven't filed an official report yet, but I've had consultations. They're very interested in this video." One more stack. Credit card statements. I don't know how my investigator got these, didn't ask. They showed $47,000 in debt. Madison's shopping sprees, Gucci bags, $5,000 purses, $800 shoes. And this, I said, pulling out the last paper, a contract between Madison and a wedding planning company. If she threw a lavish enough wedding posted about it, tagged them, she'd be paid $30,000 as an influencer. This wasn't about love or family or a once-in-a-lifetime event. This was about her making money off my savings. I stood up. My legs were steady now. My voice was steady. "I loved you, Brandon. I gave you everything. Worked 2 jobs, some years, to make sure you had what you needed. I wore the same coat for 10 winters so you could have new school clothes. And this is how you repay me." He couldn't look at me. "You're right," I said. "I made a choice, and I'm making another one now. I'm filing for grandparents' visitation rights. With these evidences, with the recording, with the testimony I have from Sophie's nanny, I will get time with my granddaughter." Madison opened her mouth. I held up my hand. "And you two, you're on your own. Plan whatever wedding you want with whatever money you actually have, but you won't get mine. Not 1 penny. Not ever." I picked up my purse. I picked up the bag with Sophie's gifts. I'd give them to her myself through proper legal channels. I walked to the door, turned back once. Brandon finally looked up. There were tears on his face. I felt nothing. I walked out of that restaurant into the cool evening air. My hands shook. My whole body shook. But I held my head high. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive. Then I called Dorothy, told her everything. She was laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm so proud of you," she kept saying. I drove home, looked at Sophie's picture on my refrigerator. "Soon, baby girl," I whispered. "Grandma's coming for you." That night I barely slept. Not from worry this time, from adrenaline, from the look on their faces when I'd turned the tables. Monday morning I called Patricia Donnelly. She's 56, one of the best family law attorneys in Portland. I'd gotten her name from Dorothy's daughter. I told her everything, showed her everything. She sat back in her chair when I finished. "Mrs. Morrison, you have one of the strongest grandparents' rights cases I've ever seen. We filed the petition that afternoon. Grandparents' visitation rights. I wanted every other Friday overnight, every Sunday afternoon. Holidays shared, nothing excessive, just time with my granddaughter. Tuesday I went to Child Protective Services in person. I brought the video, the nanny's testimony, the messages. They opened an investigation immediately. Wednesday, a social worker showed up at Brandon's house unannounced. Standard procedure, they told me later. They wanted to see the home environment, talk to Sophie. Thursday, I got a call from Patricia. The court had set a preliminary hearing. 2 weeks away. Friday, my phone rang. "Brandon." His voice shook. "Mom, please. This is getting out of hand." I kept my voice level. "You started this, Brandon. I'm finishing it, for Sophie's sake." That weekend, Madison deleted all her social media. Instagram, TikTok, everything. Gone. The wedding planning company had already cancelled her contract when word got out about the attempted fraud. Dorothy organized a support dinner at her house that Sunday. 5 other retired teachers came. They'd all taught with me over the years. They brought casseroles and hugs and outrage on my behalf. "We're writing character references for you," they said. "For the court. You're the best person we know. My neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, brought over homemade tamales on Monday. I saw what happened with your son on Facebook," she said. "Some of his friends had been talking, apparently. The story was getting around. I'm so sorry. But good for you for fighting. The nanny Maria called me Tuesday evening. I'll testify," she said. "I need to tell them how Sophie is treated. That little girl deserves her grandmother." The 2 weeks crawled by. I couldn't eat much, couldn't focus on books. I kept rehearsing what I'd say in court, kept looking at the evidence, making sure I hadn't missed anything. Dorothy came over most evenings. We'd sit on my porch drinking tea, talking about everything and nothing. "You're doing the right thing," she'd remind me when I second-guessed myself. The night before the hearing, I laid out my grey suit, pressed it carefully. I set out the folder with all my documents. I barely slept. The courthouse was downtown, big stone building, imposing. I met Patricia in the lobby at 8:30 in the morning. She wore a navy suit, carried a leather briefcase full of our evidence. Dorothy came with me. She sat in the back of the courtroom. Just her being there steadied me. Brandon and Madison arrived at 8:45 with their lawyer, Mr. Kent. He was young, maybe 30, looked nervous. They'd clearly hired him last minute, probably whoever they could afford. The judge came in at 9, Judge Martha Brennan. She was about 60, grey hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She had a reputation for being tough but fair. All rise. We stood. I felt dizzy. This was it. Judge Brennan looked at the case file. Then she looked at us. "Let's begin." Mr. Kent went first. He argued that Brandon and Madison were stable parents, that Sophie was well cared for, that Ethel Morrison had refused to support her family, had caused emotional distress, had behaved erratically. But he stumbled. He had no evidence, just words. Judge Brennan kept asking questions he couldn't answer. "Where's your proof?" What documentation do you have? He'd shuffle papers, say he'd need to follow up. Then it was our turn. Patricia stood. She was calm, professional, methodical. She presented the recording first. The judge listened, her expression hardening. So Mrs. Madison planned to extort money from Mrs. Morrison, using the child as leverage, Mr. Kent objected. Patricia calmly noted that the recording was legal under Oregon's one-party consent law. I'd been one of the parties in the message, even if accidentally. Next came the emails. The fake legal ambush. The actors. Judge Brennan asked if anyone had filed criminal charges yet. Patricia said we were considering it. Then Maria took the stand. She was nervous, her English heavily accented, but her testimony was clear. She described how Madison ignored Sophie unless someone was watching, how she'd heard Madison call Sophie a burden, how she'd seen the child flinch when Madison raised her voice. Mr. Kent tried to discredit her. Patricia produced Maria's excellent references from other families, her spotless record, her years of experience. The financial records came next. The debt, the influencer contract, the real reason for the expensive wedding. Judge Brennan removed her glasses. Let me understand this correctly. Ms. Madison was going to profit from this wedding. Patricia nodded. $30,000 from the wedding company, plus whatever she could extract from Mrs. Morrison. This was never about family celebration. It was about money, Mr. Kent objected again. Judge Brennan overruled him. Finally, the CPS report. Ms. Rodriguez, the social worker, testified. She'd done the home visit. The house was clean, she said. Adequate. But Sophie seemed withdrawn, anxious especially around Madison. She recommended supervised visits between Sophie and Madison until Madison completed parenting classes. Mr. Kent had nothing. No witnesses, no evidence, just weak protests. Judge Brennan called a 15-minute recess. I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face. Dorothy squeezed my hand. You've got this. When we returned, Judge Brennan had made her decision. I've reviewed all the evidence carefully. Her voice was firm. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've seen. Mrs. Ethel Morrison is granted regular visitation rights with her granddaughter Sophie, every Friday overnight and every Sunday afternoon from 1 to 5 p.m. I felt my knees buckle. Dorothy caught my arm. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am ordering Mr. Brandon Morrison and Ms. Madison to attend mandatory family counseling. Ms. Madison will complete an approved parenting course. I am also ordering supervised visitation between Ms. Madison and Sophie until Child Protective Services clears her. She looked directly at Brandon and Madison. If I see any further attempts at manipulation, coercion, or parental alienation, we will revisit custody arrangements entirely. Do you understand? They both nodded, pale. As for the financial matter, Judge Brennan said, Mrs. Morrison's refusal to fund a wedding is entirely within her rights. Any further harassment on this matter could result in restraining orders. The claims of mental instability and elder abuse are dismissed with prejudice. They are baseless and appear to have been made in bad faith. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. I couldn't move. Patricia was smiling. Dorothy was crying. I just stood there letting it sink in. I'd won. I'd see Sophie again. Outside the courthouse, Brandon stood by his car. Madison had already stormed off. He looked at me across the parking lot. Just looked. I thought he might say something. He didn't. He got in his car and drove away. That afternoon at 3 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. A supervised visit arranged through CPS. Ms. Rodriguez brought Sophie. Grandma Sophie's little voice. She ran to me, arms out. I caught her, held her tight. I missed you so much. I missed you too, baby. I missed you too. We made cookies that afternoon. Chocolate chip her favorite. She told me about preschool, about a caterpillar she'd found, about a new friend named Lily. Normal things. Beautiful things. When Ms. Rodriguez came to pick her up at 6, Sophie hugged me hard. Can I come back Friday? Yes, I said. Every Friday, she grinned. Okay, Grandma. I love you. I love you too, Sophie. Always. I watched them drive away. Then I went inside, sat on my couch and cried. Relief, joy, exhaustion, everything at once. The first few months after the court hearing were strange, learning a new normal. Sophie came every Friday evening. I'd pick her up from preschool myself. We'd come home, make dinner together. She'd sleep in the spare room, the one I'd kept ready all those weeks. Saturday mornings we'd have pancakes. I'd take her to the park, to the library, to the little pottery place on Main Street, where she'd paint wobbly bowls and crooked mugs. Sundays, she'd come for the afternoon. We'd work in the garden. She loved helping me water the roses, even though she'd inevitably spray herself more than the plants. We'd read books on the porch swing. Sometimes we'd just color at the kitchen table, not talking, just being together. I was careful never to speak badly about Brandon or Madison in front of her. When she'd mention them, I'd just listen. Sometimes she'd say things that worried me. Madison says I'm too loud. Daddy was sad yesterday. But mostly she'd talk about kid things, her friends, her teacher, the dog she wanted. 2 months after the hearing, my phone rang on a Wednesday evening. Brandon. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom. His voice was different, smaller. I'm sorry. I was so wrong. I didn't say anything, just listened. Madison. She had a lot of influence, but that's not an excuse. I should have protected you, should have protected Sophie. Instead, I tried to hurt you. I don't know how to fix that. Are you still with her? I asked. We're in counseling, the court-ordered kind. I don't know if we'll make it. I think I'm seeing clearly for the first time in a while. I took a breath. Brandon, you tried to steal from me. You tried to take away my granddaughter. Those aren't things I can forget overnight. I know. He was quiet for a moment. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. And I'm glad Sophie has you. She needs you. She always did. We talked for 20 minutes. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was something. A crack in the wall. He asked if we could meet for coffee sometime. Just us. I said maybe. Not yet, but maybe. We started slowly. 1 coffee meeting a month. We'd talk about Sophie mostly. Her development, her schedule, things she needed. We avoided anything about money, about Madison, about the wedding that never happened. I learned they'd gotten married after all. City Hall. Just Madison's parents as witnesses. No resort. No imported flowers. No 7-course meal. Madison had to get a regular job, customer service, at a call center. Their debt was still being paid down. The counseling was helping Brandon, he said. He was realizing things. How he'd changed. How he'd let himself be manipulated. He was trying to be better. For Sophie, he said. She deserves better. I met other grandparents going through similar situations. Dorothy told me about a support group that met twice a month at the community center. Grandparents raising grandchildren, or fighting for visitation rights, or navigating complicated family dynamics. I went to a meeting. There were 12 of us. All ages, all situations. One woman, Carol, was 65 and had full custody of 3 grandchildren after her daughter's addiction spiral. A man named Walter, 67, was fighting his ex-daughter-in-law for time with his grandson. We shared our stories, our pain, our small victories. The relief of being understood was overwhelming. These people knew. They'd been through it. Walter and I became friends. His situation was different from mine, but the core was the same. Grandparents fighting for children they loved. Sometimes after the meetings, we'd get coffee. He'd tell me about his grandson's baseball games. I'd tell him about Sophie's new obsession with butterflies. It wasn't romantic. Neither of us was looking for that. Just friendship. Understanding. Someone who got it. I also started volunteering at the public library on Tuesday mornings. Story time for preschoolers. I'd read picture books to groups of fidgety 4-year-olds. Some of them reminded me of my old students. Some of them reminded me of Sophie. It gave me purpose beyond Sophie. I loved my granddaughter desperately, but I realized I needed my own life too, my own interests, my own identity beyond grandmother. I took a watercolor class at the rec center. Turned out I was terrible at it. My trees looked like blobs, but I enjoyed it anyway. Made a few friends. We'd laugh at our awful paintings and then go out for lunch afterward. Life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days. Days when I'd see a Facebook post from one of my old teaching colleagues showing 3 generations together at a family dinner, everyone smiling. I'd think about how that should be Brandon and me, how we should have had that. But slowly the anger faded. Not the hurt. That was still there, but the sharp edge of it dulled. I learned to sit with it instead of fighting it. 6 months after the court hearing, Sophie stayed with me on a Friday night. We were making cookies like always. She looked up at me with chocolate on her nose. "Grandma, why don't you come to our house anymore?" I carefully measured flour. "Sometimes adults disagree, sweetie, about important things. But you know what? That doesn't change how much I love you. Grandma will always be here for you, every Friday, every Sunday, always." She nodded, like that made sense. "Okay. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby." Later that night, after I'd read her 3 stories and tucked her in, I stood in the doorway, watching her sleep, her little chest rising and falling, stuffed rabbit clutched in one arm. I'd fought for this, for these moments, for her to feel safe and loved and secure in at least one place in her world. It had cost me my relationship with my son, at least for now. Maybe forever. It had cost me the fantasy I'd had of our family, but it had given me this: Sophie, my integrity, my self-respect. Some nights I'd sit on my porch and think about what I'd tell my younger self if I could. The woman who'd worried so much about being a good mother that she'd sometimes forgotten to set boundaries. Who'd thought love meant giving everything, even when it hurt. I'd tell her that love and boundaries can coexist, that you can love someone and still say no, that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. I'd tell her that sometimes the people you love most will hurt you worst, and you get to decide what you'll accept and what you won't. I'd tell her she's stronger than she thinks. One Sunday afternoon in early September, Sophie and I were in the garden. She was helping me deadhead the roses. Well, helping was a strong word. Mostly she was picking petals and making flower confetti. "Grandma, why do you have so many roses?" I thought about it. Because even though they have thorns, they're beautiful. And they teach us that beautiful things are worth protecting even when it's hard. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded seriously, like she was filing that away for later. I looked at her, this little person I'd fought so hard for. Worth it. Every bit of it was worth it. A few weeks later, Brandon called. He'd been calling more often. Brief check-ins, slowly rebuilding some kind of relationship. This time he asked if he could come to one of my Fridays with Sophie, just to see us together, to be part of it. I thought about it for 2 days. Asked Patricia if it was allowed under the court order. It was. I said yes. He could come for dinner. Just dinner. He showed up at 6 on Friday. Sophie ran to him. "Daddy." He picked her up, hugged her. When he looked at me over her head, his eyes were red. "Hi, Mum." "Hi, Brandon." It was awkward. We made small talk. He helped Sophie set the table. We ate spaghetti. Sophie chatted about preschool. Brandon and I barely spoke to each other directly, but it was something. A start. Maybe. After dinner, he asked if he could talk to me privately. Sophie was watching a cartoon in the living room. We stood in the kitchen. He couldn't look at me at first. "I don't know if I can ever make this right," he said finally. "What I did, what I tried to do to you, it was unforgivable. I washed a plate, set it in the rack. It was." He flinched. "I know. I want you to know I'm trying. To be better. To be the son you deserve to have. I'm in individual therapy now, not just the couples thing. I'm working on it." I dried my hands. "Brandon, I don't know if we'll ever have what we had." You broke something. Trust doesn't grow back overnight. I know. He wiped his eyes. I just don't want Sophie to grow up without her grandmother and her father being able to be in the same room. She deserves better than that. He was right. She did. We'll see, I said. One day at a time. He nodded. Okay. One day at a time. He left after that. Sophie gave him a big hug goodbye. When the door closed, she looked up at me. I'm glad Daddy came. Me too, baby. And I realized I meant it. A little bit. I was glad. Not for me, not yet. But for her. I still don't know what the future holds. If Brandon and I will ever really repair what's broken. If Madison will change, or if they'll even stay together. If Sophie will grow up remembering these years, or if it'll all blur into vague childhood memories. But I know this. I fought for what mattered. I stood up when it would have been easier to fold. I protected my granddaughter, and I kept my dignity. Some nights I tuck Sophie in and she whispers, I love you, Grandma. And it hits me all over again that this almost didn't happen, that they almost took this from me, from her. But they didn't. We won. It's not a fairy tale ending. There's still pain, still broken pieces, still wounds that haven't healed. But I look at my savings account still intact. I look at Sophie asleep in her bed every Friday night. I look at myself in the mirror, and I recognize the woman staring back. And I think about all those years I taught school, all those lessons about standing up to bullies, about doing the right thing even when it's hard, about integrity. I finally took my own advice. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to say no, when to fight, when to protect yourself so you can protect the ones who really need you. I didn't save my relationship with my son by giving in. I saved my granddaughter by standing firm. And some nights when the house is quiet and the world is still, I think that's enough. It has to be enough. Because I'd do it all again. Every painful moment, every sleepless night, every tear. For Sophie, for myself, for the principle of it. And if you're out there facing something similar, wondering if you should just give in to keep the peace, let me tell you this. Peace bought with your self-respect isn't peace at all. It's surrender. Stand firm. Fight for what's right. Protect the innocent. And trust that the truth will come out in the end. It did for me. It can for you too. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have given in to protect the relationship? Or would you have fought like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about family courage and standing up for what's right. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope you find the strength to stand up for yourself when it matters most. Take care of yourselves, and remember you're stronger than you think.